What's good, Savages? Welcome to another episode of Blue Collar Sports. I'm Savage Paulson, and with me, as always, is the sports pundit, Zach McGibbon. What's good, Zach?
It's going good, Stefan. Good to chat with you again. A lot of great reviews of the podcast that we do.
Really?
One of the things one of the things that stood out is we are both fond consumers of Bass Pro Shops, and
hopefully one day Bass Pro Shop will sponsor this wonderful sports talk show. It will be brought to you by Bass Pro Shop. But for now, we'll just keep wearing the hats. I got like 3 or 4 of these brand new ones, and I have old ones stacked away, all different colors. Every time I drive by, I know I'm going to be in an area of a Bass Pro Shop. I make it a point to make a stop, even if it's a detour. I was in Niagara Falls last summer, and on the way back in St. Catharines, there was one I stopped. I picked up like 3 different colors. Every time I need, because they only last like a year before they start getting discolored and they start moving around. Now my son wears them too, and his head is starting to get bigger than mine, so it's like all over the place. But yeah, it's been a couple of weeks since we last saw. A lot of stuff happened, including the Super Bowl. So we'll start right there. Actually, let's talk about the Super Bowl. I was in the Dominican Republic under the sun, and I got to watch the Super Bowl on this big screen on the outside, and it was quite the experience. Unfortunately, the audio system wasn't the best, so I couldn't really hear the game being commented on, but nonetheless, me, my son, and my family, we enjoyed most of the game. Look, I'm not going to lie. I wish it would have been a closer contested game. I wrote that in my note. That was the number one thing. My first thought were, wow, this was, for me, the first thing that jumps off right from the beginning of the game was Patrick Mahomes just looked completely, I don't know what it was, but he didn't look like himself. He looked like he was rushing. And I think a lot of that has to do with the Eagles defense. They did not give him room to breathe whatsoever. But Andy Reid didn't seem to have any answer to kind of adjustment. I thought they were going to make bigger adjustments after halftime. It wasn't until the fourth quarter, when I think the game was already decided, that they started scoring touchdowns or starting to gain ground. What's your all-around thought on the game as you saw it?
Yeah, pretty much similar to you. As I was watching it, it was very much all Eagles throughout. And I thought there would be a moment where, because it was the Chiefs, you could never really truly rule them out, even when it was like 24-0 at halftime.
Absolutely.
I was thinking, oh, it's the Chiefs. They're going to find a way to get close. I mean, we saw a few years ago, they were able to come back against the Houston Texans in the playoffs as well. And this is Patrick Mahomes, and this is Andy Reid. So I didn't really rule it out until that final Devonta Smith touchdown that made it 31-0. And it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's over now. Yeah, I agree. That Eagles defense really came to play. That front defensive line especially was just wreaking havoc on this Chiefs offensive line. And there's been a lot about Patrick Mahomes, and he certainly deserves some of the blame as well. But it's hard when you're a quarterback, when you essentially have turnstiles as your offensive line, and they're all just kind of rushing you at once, so you can't get your feet set, and you can't follow through on a play and try and look for your guys on a route. And we talk about a lot, I think back to that game between the Bills and the Chiefs, and when the tight end there, whose name all of a sudden escapes me, had the ball in his grasp. Like, Josh Allen threw up a prayer, and the tight end there almost caught it, but just didn't catch it. Sometimes at those points, you just got to make that big time play.
Right. Was it Kincaid? Is it Kincaid? That's the tight end?
Yeah, Dalton Kincaid. Yeah, that's right. I was thinking Dawson Knox, but I was like, it's not Dawson. It's the other tight end. But Kincaid had that ball go through his hand, and it was like, sometimes, plays are not going to be perfectly developed, but you've got to be able to come up big in a spot like that, and you have to come up with a big play.
Same thing with Mark Andrews and the Ravens, right?
Yeah.
Like, that ball wasn't perfectly placed on the goal line, but you got to make that catch, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in the playoffs, especially in those plays. I agree, that Bills game, yeah. But I think what you mean is that it was something different. Yes, you are asked to make those plays as the Chiefs. I'm talking about the Chiefs wide receiver, but there was a lot of those passes from Mahomes that were not accurate at all, that were really hard, really low, or really behind the shoulder. So, sorry, keep going.
No, I was just going to say, it's a combination of all of that, right? They just didn't look prepared. And I think it was just one of those things where the luck of the Chiefs kind of ran out. We saw all throughout the year, it's like somehow they would come through with all these big games, whether it be a blocked field goal or, a last minute drive. They always seem to find a way. And I think just the luck ran out, and the Eagles realized, look, if we're going to beat this team, we have to come out swinging right from the jump and be prepared and get them on their heels right from the jump.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do that, then, and we let them back in it, it's going to be a competitive game, and we know what Patrick Mahomes can do. And I think they just did a really good job of overwhelming this Chiefs squad. And I didn't even think the defense, I know the score ended up being 40-22, but I really didn't even think the defense was awful or anything like that. I just think they were just on the field for so long.
Yeah.
That eventually you're just going to get wear down. And as you can only do so much if your offense isn't doing anything, right? And so the big statistic that kind of came out for me and just shows just how great of a game plan the Eagles had going against the Chiefs is that they had 6 sacks total for the game, right? Including a back-to-back sack play at one point. And all of those sacks, all the plays that the defense played, none of them were blitzes.
That's what I wanted to bring up. They blitzed 0 times during this game, which when I heard that after the game, I'm like, how did they get so much pressure on the quarterback? Like that defensive line just bull rushed it was at first. I remember watching the first quarter. I'm like, dude, what the the offensive line is just getting manhandled easy, left, right. It didn't matter where he was escaping, either if it was right or if it was left, and he was met immediately either with his offensive line guy being bull rushed into him, so he's forced to move to his left or to his right to try to rush through him. We saw that a few times, trying to catch Kelsey in stride. Yeah, it was messy. And again, I expected them to come out of in the second half, playing, and they went, I think they went 3 and out. The first, they were like, they get the ball first, and then 1, 2, 3, 3 and out, and you're like, yeah, they needed to score on that first drive of the second half, and it didn't happen. And you're right. When Devontae Smith caught that touchdown pass and made it 31-0, when the game was done, right?
Yeah. And the one thing too I want to mention too, if you were to have told me before the game that the Chiefs were going to shut down Saquon Barkley and they would still lose, I would have thought you were crazy. Because Saquon really didn't do that much during the game. He had some good yards, and
right, but
not the typical Saquon game we had been seeing in the playoffs. And
right.
So that's why I kind of point to I didn't think the defense was awful because I think they were circling on Saquon and trying to put it on to Jalen Hurts to say, all right, you got to be the one to take over. And I have to give credit where it's due. I think Jalen Hurts kind of recognized that situation, and he relied on his receivers in both Brown and Smith, and he took over. And this was the kind of game that he was looking for. And so being able to shut down Saquon yet still losing is still quite a shock to me, even as we're talking.
I didn't realize Saquon got 25 carries for 57 yards, right? So he had 0 impact, which again, for me, it was different. I was somewhere unfamiliar. It was hard to see the screen sometimes, and I knew Saquon Barkley by the third quarter, that even though they were leading by big, I knew I hadn't heard or seen a lot of him, which led me to believe I didn't know until right now how many yards he actually had during the game. I'm surprised that he had so much care. I just thought, to me, up until right now, I just thought they all expect us to rely on Saquon in this battle, and I think they just went the opposite way. And Jalen Hurts, I think some people still thought he wasn't 100%, and we all know it's football. No one at this time of year is 100%. But he went 17 for 22 for 221 yards with 2 TDs and 119 passer rating. For me, this game brought Jalen Hurts. I was not the biggest Jalen Hurts fan before this football game. And I was not expecting him to have a good game. And he just I became a fan of his during this game. His composure, the way he was a leader from the start to finish of this game. When you looked at the opposite sideline and you saw Mahomes sad, depleted, deflated. Kelsey had this blank stare on their face. They were defeated halfway through the game, and Jalen Hurts was stoic in his approach, and he just took it to the Kansas City Chiefs. And Yeah, I became a fan a lot more than I was anyway before the game.
Yeah, he's somebody that if he didn't play for the Eagles, I would love him more. But you know, with him, his story is quite an interesting story. Coming through from Alabama first, he gets benched for Tua Tagovailoa. He accepts the bench
At halftime.
At halftime, yeah,
Right.
accepts the benching, and then transfers over to Oklahoma, becomes a Heisman Trophy winner,
Right.
and then has a great time in Oklahoma. Gets drafted by the Eagles. And then it's kind of similar where he's behind Carson Wentz. He's just kind of learning under the system. Then he starts to rise above, and you have the criticism. And then he finally is able to, lead them to their second Super Bowl. Like, Jalen Hurts is a guy that sometimes you see the best of Jalen Hurts, like a guy that could be efficient. He could be somebody that utilizes the options that are around him while also being mobile and extending the play out and obviously getting those extra yards when need be. And then other times you could just see a Jalen Hurts that's just not committed to the offense. And we saw that last year when the Eagles went on that massive losing streak and then got upset by the Bucs in the first round. So he could be a very hot and cold player. But I think what we've kind of learned with him is that when it really comes to crunch time, he can step up when he needs to. And even in that first Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts had a really good game. I think it gets lost because it was just such a shootout between the Chiefs and the Eagles.
They lost by 3 points 2 years ago, right? And he had 3 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, right? He threw for 335. Like, he threw for way more yards and threw 1 more touchdown, had a better game statistically in 2018, lost by 3 because Mahomes had a better game, right? I think he threw 3 or 4, like, Mahomes was kind of the X factor in this Super Bowl, where like if the Chiefs' best player is not on that game, you saw that they don't have a lot else to rely on at this point, Any thought on Travis Kelce? You think he's going to retire after this?
I don't think so. I feel like if he was going to retire, it would have been after this game.
Right.
He always screamed to me as a guy that will just continue to play because he loves the game.
Right.
So I think he seems like a guy that's going to go until the wheels fall off. And he's already kind of set in stone. He's got obviously the relationship with Taylor Swift off the field. And I mean, they make that a point of emphasis sometimes with the broadcast a little too much.
I don't think he needs football anymore.
No.
But I think he will continue playing. I don't think he'll be as good though. Because again, I don't think he needs football anymore. And I think, again, I'm talking out of order here. I'm not a high talented athlete like he is. Like obviously he plays football in the NFL, but I don't know. I didn't see a good game out of him. I didn't see him sometimes it didn't seem like he wanted to be in the field at all. Like, so to me, it's like, that was bad body language from me, the whole game from him, and I hate seeing that, But again, when your quarterback is having a really bad game and nothing is going well, nothing is going right, it's easy to get to that point, and I can completely understand. I think the pressure of winning 3 in a row was a lot more than people made it out to be, right? I think they really wanted that third because it was never been done before, and I think that was the main focus for them, and then they just kind of lost track of who they were really playing and focused on the Eagles. But I'm happy for the Eagles. I'm happy for Jalen Hurts. Would you put Jalen Hurts as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL?
I would be close.
Right.
Definitely in the top 10. I would have him hovering around that 5 spot. I think if you ask me in a few more months and I'm starting to put together a list of the top QBs of the league, I would think so. Like off the top of my head, I still think Mahomes is in there. I think Josh Allen's in there, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. That 5th spot is kind of open.
Those are my 4 too. It's like Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Josh Allen. And then there's so many guys you could put at 5, I feel. Like, especially after last season, like there's a lot of good quarterbacks that hover from the 5th to the 10th spot. You could put a lot of guys in there. So Jalen Hurts definitely might right now be at my number 5 spot simply because he's fresh off winning a Super Bowl, good performance, leadership, all that stuff. But again, ask me at the beginning of next season and I might tell you he's not even worthy of being in the top 20. Like, I kind of flip and switch. Let's keep moving in the direction of football here and let's pivot to the NFL draft. The combine, I believe, is coming up very soon. We're getting ready for the draft. Here are the names we got hovering right now in the top. We got Cam Ward from Miami, quarterback. Who else? We got Shedeur Sanders, obviously. We got Travis Hunter. Who else we got? I mean, the names I see Abdul Carter, edge from Penn State, maybe at the Browns if they have a need for that. But the real big names here are Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders. One of the big question is which quarterback is going to go first? Let's not talk about who goes number one overall, but in your opinion, Shedeur Sanders, if you were on the clock right now and you had to pick a quarterback for your team, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, or someone else?
Yeah, if I was put on the clock, if I'm a franchise, I'm the general manager of a franchise, I'm looking for a QB, I always like the high ceiling guys because the high ceiling guys could be such a big payoff. And to me, the guy that has the highest ceiling is Cam Ward from Miami. And the thing with Cam Ward is that he's got such a great arm. His arm talent is unbelievable. Some of those games he took over for Miami last season, he was just tremendous. The big thing with him has just been decision making.
Right.
Finding the right reads and whatnot. And so sometimes that can be teached out of a guy. And then other times it's like the guy just can never learn and makes the critical mistake. But if he's able to, get that resolved, I think that's a really good quarterback to look at. That could be a high-end QB prospect. The thing with Shedeur Sanders is like, it's funny. I've seen the comparisons. With Shedeur, I think he's got a higher floor. Like, I think he's got more of a chance to be like NFL ready if he's drafted. And some teams like that because it's like, okay, we can get a guy that we could throw in there. He could be ready to go day one. He can learn the offense. The thing with Shedeur Sanders is like, there's nothing really that like stands out. Like there's not the arm talent isn't exactly like otherworldly or anything like that. He's just a solid, really good quarterback. And the thing that really kind of makes him stand up for me is that he is very good with some of the game time decisions and making the decisions on the field. The big thing he had last year was that his offensive line was one of the weakest in the country. He had a very bad offensive line. And so sometimes he would have to make some rush decisions. And so that's why Shedeur Sanders is just so high, is because he's got a good arm. He's got good frame for a quarterback that you would look for. He can move out of the pocket and extend a play if you need him to. Got good footwork. Like everything you would kind of need in an NFL quarterback is right there in Shedeur Sanders. But in the case of Cam Ward, if I'm looking for the highest potential guy, the guy that could reach that next level, I think it's him. So personally, I would pick Cam Ward. But I could totally see an NFL franchise saying, look, we need to get somebody ready because he's going to play a lot of downs and he's going to play a lot of minutes. And so if we pick Shedeur, he's a guy that could be ready, day one. So I personally would pick Cam Ward, though. I really like the potential. I think it's brimming there for him.
So the order for the thing, you got the Titans picking first, the Browns second, the Giants third, Patriots, and then you rounded off the top five with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we know Titans could use a quarterback. Obviously, I think they're going to pick a quarterback at one, either be Cam Ward or Shedeur. Cleveland Browns, I don't know what their quarterback room is right now. I mean, you got Jameis Winston that's still under contract with them, and you still have the other guy, Deshaun Watson, which I've never been a fan of, even when he was in Houston. I don't like the kid. I just wish they would be done with him. I think he's a waste of money. Like, they spent a lot of money on that guy. The Giants need a quarterback. I think the Giants leap out at me if I look right now and I go, like, if any team, because the Titans got Will Levis, right? And I don't know what your thoughts are on the kid. I think he had a lot of potential, but like you mentioned of Cam Ward, I think sometimes his decision-making is very poor, right? Yeah. So Titans are probably looking to move on from him and just start fresh. And I could see Cam Ward being that guy simply because of what you said, right? They might be willing to spend more years, think more long-term than the win right now. That's why I think I see Cam Ward going first to the Titans and then the Giants drafting Sanders with the third pick. Because I think the Giants desperately, for their franchise, for their fans, they need someone that could play a lot of downs right away. Am I wrong about that? Or I think they're more desperate they're in a bit more of an urgency. Am I wrong? Right?
The Giants are in desperation mode right now.
Right.
I mean, this is the jobs of Joe Shane and Brian Dable on the line in this draft, and so they need to make a splash. They looked really bad this past year for letting Saquon go, and we saw what happened there with him going to the Eagles.
Absolutely.
And keeping Daniel Jones. So now they got to start off fresh. In the case of the Titans, I think I've noticed a lot with some NFL franchises, but there is a bit of a stubbornness to kind of keeping a guy and seeing it through. And I think that's might be what happens with Will Levis. Because the thing with Will Levis is that, yes, he was not very good last year. I mean, you saw the memes all over the place of like every time there's an interception, his hands on the head, right? And like just practically could be paintings in a museum. Some of the poses he was in, it was unbelievable. But they're so committed to it. Like I think they'll look because really, when you look at this Titans squad, especially offensively, defensively, they're very good.
Yeah.
They're kind of under the radar in terms of their defense, but offensively, it's like, man, they've got no weapons to work with at the wide receiver front. They let go of Derrick Henry. They try to go with Tyjae Spears and bring in Tony Pollard, and it hasn't really worked out as much as they would have liked to. And so I think they look at the surrounding pieces for Will Levis and they think, oh, if we get him, a different receiver, or if we get him this sort of weapon and we get him something better. Their offensive line was also, very poor this past season. So they may not look at it like this is a Will Levis issue. They may look at it as just this is an offense issue.
I mean, they got Calvin Ridley as their wide receiver one,
Yeah. And so it's like, and you kind of look back too. I mean, we were talking about Saquon with the Giants. How about AJ Brown with the Titans?
Right.
A few years ago, getting traded to the Eagles. The Titans tried to take the risk. They drafted a guy in Traylon Burks from Arkansas. Like literally the comps coming out of college was that he was very similar to AJ Brown. So I think they were like, oh, well, we'll trade AJ Brown for whatever reason we wanted to trade him for.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, and then we could get a receiver similar in him and we could pay him for cheaper. But the problem is Traylon Burks, to say he's not worked out would be an understatement. Like there's some sort of stat that escapes me now, but it was like, I think like AJ Brown has like more touchdown catches than Burks has catches in his entire career or something like that.
That's crazy.
Like something insane. And so like they try to fill that void. So all that to say, I could totally see the Titans trading back and saying, you know what, this first overall pick is valuable. We could get more draft assets. If we trade back, we could get some more picks. And then we could really like round up because it's not the strongest draft class this year either.
Absolutely.
So they might be just trying to bet on a team like the Giants to be desperate and say, look, we're going to give up the first overall pick. If you really want this quarterback, if there's a guy that you want and you want to trade up for him, we're fielding offers. So you better give us a good package here to try and, trade up for this first overall slot. And the Giants may be just desperate enough to do that. I mean, there might be other teams, like really the top two teams, the top two quarterbacks in the draft class is Shador and Cam Ward. And the other quarterbacks, like you see like a Jackson Dart or a Jalen Milroe, there's like good skill sets there, but they're not exactly like, so I could see Dart getting into the first round, but Milroe is one of those guys that he's got so many physical intangibles. Like he can run, he's got some arm talent and whatnot, but it's not all formed together.
Right.
Like the comparisons are kind of like Lamar Jackson when he was coming out of Louisville. So if he's able, it's again, one of those things like if he's able to put it all together and a team can get very enticed with a quarterback with physical intangibles. I mean, look at Anthony Richardson. Like they were like, he only played 20 times for Florida in college.
That's crazy.
And they still drafted him at 4th overall, right? Because he had such these physical intangibles. They're like, oh, we can mold this guy into our vision and he could be our quarterback. And we see how that's turned out for the Colts. Yeah. So all that to say, I think the Titans will trade back. I really do. I think they're fielding some offers, and I think they will stay committed to Levis because I don't think they look at it as a Will Levis problem. I think they see it as we've got an offense problem, and so we'll trade back. We'll get some assets, and we'll try and fill up this offense and try and give Will Levis more of a chance.
So in the end, chances of someone moving up. That's what I was writing. I was looking at my notes there. I was like, I read yesterday that the Cowboys might be thinking of moving up from 12. Do you think your Cowboys are going to make a splash in this draft, or is it just business as usual with Jerry Jones and let's try to fuck this up as much as possible?
I could totally see that latter happening. I'm preparing for it. I'm emotionally prepared for it. The thing with the Cowboys is that One of the things I will always put over with the Cowboys is that they draft very well.
Right.
They do have very good draft classes.
And it's not like they need a quarterback.
No, they're at a position right now. The biggest needs for them is they need to get some more offensive linemen and work a little bit more on their defensive line. It's really their front core that they need to work on. I know there was some talk about the running backs too.
Right.
And
do you not think they need another wide receiver behind CD Lamb?
A wide receiver too would certainly be good. They were hoping for that with Brandon Cooks when they traded for him, but he hasn't really elevated to that wide receiver 2 slot. They've got good tight ends. Obviously, you got CD Lamb, which helps a lot. A wide receiver 2, certainly, but I don't think it's as desperate of a need as it's being made out to me. Not a first round need, I guess, is what I
Right. You could probably get a good wide receiver 2 in the second round, even.
Yeah, second or third round. I think you could find a quality number 2. You know, I've seen some mock drafts having Ashton Genty going to the Dallas Cowboys, and Ashton Genty has also said he wanted to be a Cowboy.
I've seen almost every projected draft having the Broncos draft him for some reason.
Yeah.
Genty. I've heard his name and the Broncos together. Yeah, it's a very interesting draft simply because, like you said, outside of those 3 names that I named, Travis Hunter, it's a great. By the way, he's entering the combine as a cornerback, so I believe that him being a wide receiver at any point in his NFL career is probably not gonna happen. I think he's better suited as a defensive player. But if I look like I looked through the order, and one of the teams that jumped off as me, and this is simply from my perspective, if I was the Chicago Bears at 10, they have a quarterback, think they moving up to get maybe something else of value, maybe higher in the class. That's one of the team, but even at 10, I think to fill their needs, they could probably get someone really good at 11, at 10. You got the 49ers at 11 right before the Cowboys. I mean, there's a lot of teams that could make, even the Steelers at 21, like they're probably just going to draft another wide receiver. If I had to put my money on it, late in the first round, you're like, there's a few good wide receivers. We need someone that maybe could be behind George Pickens or who knows, So I'm looking forward to just seeing if someone makes a move. Even the Jets at 7 now that Aaron Rodgers, right? It's been pretty much said that Aaron Rodgers is not going to come back. Who's going to be quarterback for the Jets next year? Are they going to draft someone new? Are they going to want to? Imagine if they move up. I don't think they will. I haven't read anywhere they will, but there's a lot of storylines you could kind of fabricate in your head, which makes it interesting. And that's, I guess, on purpose, maybe a little bit, So I'm excited, but again, I think you're right. I think Cam Ward, if they do, whoever gets to pick at first, I think coin flip between Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, then Travis Hunter, 1, 2, 3, maybe in that order and whatever the case may be. But I'm looking forward to it. Anything else you want to add about the NFL draft?
Yeah, quickly, kind of going back on that Cowboys thing, the Cowboys will either go for a high, flashy player like they did with CD Lamb a few years ago, if available. So if Ashton Genty's available, I could totally see them getting it. I think the need for running back is a little overstated for the Cowboys because while he didn't have the hottest start to the year, their running back for the Cowboys, it was essentially when he was combining carries with Ezekiel Elliott.
Pollard.
He wasn't really getting it's not Tony Pollard. No? What was his name now? All of a sudden, I've forgotten his name. But he essentially became a 1,000-yard rusher for the Dallas Cowboys this past year. I see his face. I'm going to Google search it now. But once Zeke was out of the picture and he wasn't taking much of the carries, this running back was able to kind of come in and get 1,000 yards rushing. So if they wanted to get Ashton Genty in for the Cowboys and just kind of do like a running back,
are you talking about Rico?
Yeah, Rico Dowdle.
Yeah.
If they want to do a running back by committee, I could possibly see it. But for the thing with the Cowboys is they love to draft offensive linemen that have high upside. They're very big on that. There's like they drafted Tyler Smith a few years ago, who's now an all-pro guard. But at the time he was coming out, it was like, if he could get his footwork adjusted or whatnot, he could be a mauler because you would see the game tape and he would just be like pancaking guys, on running plays. And so that's some of the things that the Cowboys love to do is they love projects and they love building offensive linemen. So I could totally see them going offensive line again because that is a need for them.
Right.
especially with the questions surrounding Zach Martin, if he's going to return this year. He's been talking about potentially retiring, and so that would be a massive hole to fill as well.
Yeah, because I think on the right side, they could probably use some help.
Yeah,
like you said,
exactly.
Zach Martin, it's questionable to return. I mean, they really don't have anybody in the Brock Hoffman, Jack Anderson. Like, there's these guys. I don't think right now they have right tackle Terrence Steele. Like, I think they could use some help on the right side for sure.
Yeah, Terrence Steele was there. They really had been trying. He's an undrafted tackle, and he was a project for them. Like,
really, huh?
You look a lot at the offense. Like Brock Hoffman was a 5th round pick, if I recall correctly, and so they love that sort of stuff with their offensive line. And quickly on Travis Hunter, too, before we kind of get on to the next topic, I thought it was interesting that he was going in as a DB. While I do think he is a better defensive back than he is a wide receiver, I thought he would go wide receiver because there's more money in the NFL right now to be a wide receiver. But he may reset the market as a defensive back. And I'm not entirely ruling out either that he'll play some snaps on as a wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm not putting it out, obviously. I think he's got talent. He might be drafted to a team that goes like imagine if he gets drafted to, I don't know, the Giants, if they decide to go instead of getting a quarterback. Because the thing is about draft, there's Shedeur Sanders and there's Cam Ward, but I think there's a lot of guys right now on the market that could get traded or can sign, right? Like if you think of guys like Sam Darnold, a lot of his name's been thrown around. Like he might go to the Giants or he might be available for certain teams, and Russell Wilson and so on. And so, like, there's a lot of names out there that you might be willing to go, like, I'm going to take a chance on a veteran instead of putting my money and my franchise next 5 years on one young guy that has, considering that it might not be the best draft class that we've had for the
kind of like that bridge QB, right? The QB that can like be the settle in the offense, can play well enough that you could be consistent, but you wait for that one big prospect to kind of come through and you could develop a quarterback in between. And if that veteran QB ends up being better than you expect, even better, right? But you get him at a value and you can work him more as a bridge QB, and that's, and sometimes it works out. I think with the Lions, I think when they traded for Goff, they were hoping for something high upside, but at worst, they're like, oh, we've got a bridge QB that we could work with, because they went out and drafted a quarterback as well that same year when they got Jared Goff. But now Goff has just taken over, right? And he is the guy in Detroit, and so it would be silly to move on from him. So when you list off the names like a Sam Darnold, who's going to be very interesting if he goes back to the Vikings or if he tests himself from free agency. But you look at some of these guys that are available, like I think Geno Smith is also going to be coming up into free agency as well this year. I think he's in his final year.
Years of his contract.
So it's coming up pretty soon. So that's another guy to kind of keep circled as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those are guys that I look at as more like good quarterbacks you can rely on to kind of go in and execute your system that you need to, but they're not going to be, those top 5 guys that are going to take over a game and be somebody that can control the game, but could still, if you've got good pieces around them, can still be reliable. So it's an interesting draft class this year. It's going to be interesting where guys go and which teams will pick what and who will move up from where.
Absolutely. I was just wondering, it's Hendon Hooker, right? That the Lions, Hendon Hooker. Like, he was there was a lot of upside to him, right? Now he's basically the 3rd string, I think, in the line behind Teddy Bridgewater, right? Because they signed him last year. So it's going to be interesting. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks running around. You still got Aaron Rodgers that, might go somewhere. There's so many storylines right now. It's, again, the NFL for me, it's, when it comes to storylines and news, it's always at the top, even when we're 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. So you got the draft, then after that, it's like, what else you got? So it's like
free agency,
right? They got it down path. I love it, and I'm looking forward to the next off season to see. Every time you get to September, and you're like, man, it looks completely different, right? And that's what I kind of like sometimes about it. Let's move on to some hockey. Again, I have not really watched much hockey in the last 10 years. Let's say 10 years. But something caught my attention last week. I was on vacation. I was in the Dominican Republic, so I was kind of disconnected from everything. I was already disconnected from hockey. Like I said, I don't follow hockey much. And then I came back and I heard about this Four Nations face-off, and I was like, "What is this?" Because first impression for me was like, "Is this like they've had these mid-season tournaments like the Canada Cup or whatever they call them?" And I was like, "That's probably something like that I completely missed that we were having in 2025." And then I did a bit more research and I realized, oh no, instead of having an all-star game this year, they decided, and that was decided last year. Again, do not pay attention to it, so I apologize. So this year they decided to have this Four Nations face-off between Canada, United States, Finland, and Sweden. They're going to put four teams together and they're going to duke it out for a championship or a trophy or tie, whatever you want to call it. Nice trophy, by the way. I like the trophy. And I found myself immediately intrigued. Number one, because you have exactly what happened in the first minute of the Canada-Sweden game, where you had McDavid to Crosby to McKinnon, and that was it. I was like, immediately, I'm like, what is this? And I'm immediately invested. I'm a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, even though I don't follow. I followed them before when they won their cups. A big Sidney Crosby fan. I love the guy. Yeah, it's really interesting. And one of the things, before I pass it on to you, I wish other sports, including the NBA and I don't know how the NFL would structure this, but instead of, like, we saw what happened this year with the Pro Bowl. Like, they don't even play football anymore, right? It's like the guys are so messed up at the end of the season, number one, that I ain't playing one more game, even if it's just for fun. Right. And now they've resorted to these games and these goofy competitions. It's more of a Peyton Manning versus Eli Manning show than anything else. And yeah. I'm good for that for about 15, 20 minutes on a Thursday night. You know what I mean? Yeah. After that, it kind of gets goofy and I'm like, switch the channel. I'd rather watch PGL, like new golf show, any day of the week now. And so this Four Nations face-off in NHL, it kind of, I won't lie, it's kind of like giving me the feelings a little bit more for hockey. And I sat there on Thursday night and I watched for the first time a full period between the United States and Finland, which was a good first period. I stopped watching after, and then after that, the Americans just started demolishing Finland and ended up winning 6-1. What are your thoughts on this? And do you think this is good? Because I think this is good for business. The business of hockey, the business for the NHL, and I love it. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I came into it with a bit of skepticism because mainly the NHL, one of the weaknesses of the league is that they're not very good at marketing their league and highlighting some of their big superstars like a Connor McDavid and a Nathan McKinnon. So I was kind of going in with some skepticism about it because, it's only 4 countries that were going in. I'm used to like the IIHF, world championships where it's like, oh, it's 16 countries and you got so much representation of the world in there. And so I was looking and it's like, oh, we're only getting 4 countries. And yeah, I know it's like Sweden and Finland, they're arch rivals, and obviously Canada and USA, which as we're recording, that's going to be taking place tonight, which should be very interesting to watch from the atmosphere. And so I'm looking forward to that game. But as you mentioned, when I watched that Canada-Sweden game and that first, the passing there from McDavid to Crosby to McKinnon, like, oh, the big thing that I was concerned about, and I learned later on that, players actually really wanted to represent their countries at an international stage because the NHL had banned players from playing in the Olympics.
Right.
So the last couple of Olympics, this was back in 2018, I believe. So they really wanted to return back to an international stage. And so I didn't realize how much I missed seeing, some of the best players from each country representing their country. And then, playing in the case of Team Canada's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting to see Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand's on this team. I've never thought I'd see the day where the Bell Center would cheer for Brad Marchand.
Right.
I mean, that's insane to me, right?
That was a headline the next day in every sports talk I saw.
Mitch Marner scored the game-winning goal in the Bell Center, and the fans cheered. It was unbelievable. Yeah. It's like,
but I love it. I'm all here for it. I'm all here for it.
I didn't realize how much I missed the international hockey flavor from the previous Olympic Games. Like, I obviously remember the 2010 Olympics and Crosby, the golden goal and all that. So I remember that, but man, like
I remember 2002, I think it was, when the United States versus Canada. Remember that game? It was a huge game. I think it was like a quarterfinal or a semifinal games. I'm not remember. I remember getting together with all my friends. We were in my friend's basement back then, and we were like 10 or 12 people just sitting around and watching this game. And you had Lemieux, I believe, I forget, what year was that? Was it early 2000? It has to be. Like 2000?
If it was the Salt Lake City, so it'd be 2002.
Right.
Yeah.
It was, I just remember sitting there, and it's like a core memory of just sitting there as a kid. I was 22 at the time, 21, 22, and just watching the game. And at the time, the roster was just unbelievable of guys you had on that team all playing together for one. And the same thing in 2010, like I was a full-blown Penguins Crosby fan, and for him to be part of that team and to score that goal, to win the gold medal, chills.
Oh yeah.
And I'm also reminded of, I believe it was I forget what international tournament it was. It was 2004, 2005. There was some sort of international. I remember the Canadians had this yellow and black jersey. Do you remember that?
It's kind of vaguely.
Right. Vaguely. And Crosby was on this team no. Was he as a junior? Is that possible? I don't remember.
It might have been the World Juniors because they were on strike that year, I think. So all eyes were on the World Junior that year. Right. It's like, we're getting our hockey fix.
Maybe that's what it was. But yeah, seeing the Canadian team and all this. Dude, can you imagine McDavid, Crosby, and McKinnon on the same team in the NHL? It would almost be unfair to have these three guys on one line, right? So to see them on this international, and to have a game like we're going to have tonight versus the United States, the young, brash USA versus these veterans, these guys that are been proven versus in the Team Canada. Ah, man, dude, I'm all here for it, and I'm really looking forward to actually watching some hockey tonight. Something I never thought I'd say anymore versus, again, because I just don't watch the NHL much anymore. Again, it probably because I'm more interested in the storylines than I am I love sports. I love watching sports, the NFL, but there's, the NFL, the NBA, even other sports, I feel like they're really done a really good job at marketing their superstars and being able to attach yourself to do superstars versus the NHL. There's a bunch of names I heard that I'd never heard before. They were like, right. Canada's going with maybe this guy in goal. I'm like, I have no fucking clue who these guys are. I'm like, I've never heard this guy. No, what happened to all the goalies we had before? Like, to me, it's still like,
where's Martin Brodeur?
Yeah,
where's going on with him?
Carey Price not playing anymore? Miller, I'm like, where are all these guys? All these new names, I don't even know. And some of these names, I don't even know if they're Canadian, American, or Sweden. I'm like, Hullebuck. I didn't even know he played for the Americans, that guy. I was like,
I thought he would be Finnish.
I'm like, that guy doesn't sound American. I do. And also, before I move on, unless you have something else to say, I'm all in for PK Subban as an analyst as well. I've been watching him and Mark Messier. Mark Messier looked like he was having a hard time on Thursday. I won't lie, like he was mumbling. He could tell he was like, I don't know, he was searching for a lot of his words, but these two kind of fit together very well. And PK Subban's excitement for this tournament, you could feel it through the screen.
Yeah,
he's like Jameis Winston, dude. Love Jameis Winston. They had him front and center for the Super Bowl, pre-Super Bowl show, and I love that guy. I would sign that guy on my team just to have him on the bench. I'm like, you're not playing. I just need you to be here. We
need some locker room boosting. We need the morale boosting in the locker room.
Bro.
Whoever came up with the idea to put a camera onto Jameis Winston and have him travel New Orleans should get a raise for that, because some of the content I was seeing out of there was hilarious.
Unbelievable. You're absolutely right.
Dancing with the band there was just incredible.
Did you see him and Bert Kreischer?
Yes, they were up in the stands, right?
Dude,
yeah.
Dude.
Incredible.
Just good TV, good entertainment, and just a good fucking guy. Like Jameis Winston, you could tell he loves life and he loves the game. It's just so fun to see. And PK Subban gives me the same vibe. I mean, PK Subban was an amazing defenseman in the NHL for a few seasons. And it's good to see him be still part of the game, You see that a lot in the NHL. It's like a boys club a little bit, The guys love the game so much that they just want to be part of the game, either it be as a coach in coaching or broadcasting, and it's really fun to see.
Yeah, PK Subban, a legend here in Belleville, I'll tell you that, because he played for the Belleville Bulls in his junior years, and his brother actually, goaltender Malcolm Subban, currently plays for the Belleville Senators, their AHL affiliate right now.
Right.
So it's so he's very much beloved here.
Didn't he get drafted by Boston?
Yes, and he's bounced around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he went to Columbus at one point, but yeah, he's bounced around a lot. Now I think he's just going to be a steadfast AHL goaltender, and it's smart for him to be here in Belleville because obviously he's already got that local connection from his time with the Bulls. But all that to say, you know, as a Sens fan, I couldn't stand PK Subban when he played because there was some heated, you know, playoff rivalries with Montreal during those twins. And I would always remind the Habs fans, Montreal won quite a few of those series. Or sorry, Ottawa won quite a few of those series.
That's
right. And I will still say Erik Karlsson was better than PK Subban. I don't even think it's a debate anymore. But that's for a different show. But all that to say, as an analyst, I think he's fantastic. You know, we're part of this new era now in broadcasting where it's a lot more of the entertainment value. Your personality shows out a lot more. And I think that's something that PK Subban fills in so well. Like ever since, you know, around the NBA with Shaq and Charles Barkley and, you know, having those guys show off their personalities. Now that's kind of the standard for your panel show is to try and get some big time personalities to fill in. So that's why you see like Fox bringing in Gronk, right? Like that's a guy to fill in on your panels. So
he'll say some outlandish shit instead of just being so professional like a lot of these older vets, you know? And you see all these older vets wearing their Super Bowl ring, they're all dressed right, they're gonna say the right thing, they're polished, they've been in their broadcast booth for years. And you bring a guy like Gronk and Jason Kelsey and all these guys, and they're like, fucking let me take my shirt off and add some fun to it. And again, like you said, I love it. I love seeing it. It adds a little bit of color to the game. The NFL could be very serious. It's a very physically demanding sport, and there's so many different things that you have to pay attention from the offense to the defense. So when you're commentating, when you're in the broadcast booth, there's so many different perspective of the game. So to bring in color, to bring in these guys that bring a different experience, also a different vibe to the television, it's great to see. That's why I love PK Subban. I love seeing the hockey, and I'm watching it. Hey, if you were able to bring me back, good, something's working. That's how I see it. For sure. So the floor is yours. If you something you want to talk about.
I wanted to quickly mention. Talk a little baseball.
Let's go.
Quickly. Yeah, I wanted to quickly mention Max Scherzer signing with the Toronto Blue Jays. An interesting signing there for Toronto. I mean, they weren't able to get some of the names they were looking for, including Juan Soto, but it's okay, stiff head, because we're getting 40-year-old Max Scherzer on a 1-year deal, $15.5 million.
That's definitely what it sounds like. It feels like they tried everything to get the big names to sign in Toronto, and they failed. I wouldn't say they failed. I mean, it's a tough market. You're trying to bring in, you're going to have to pay more for a Juan Soto and he was already getting $660 million from the Mets. It's a lot of money. In my opinion, if I had to pick a player to build a team around, he would be my number one guy. It would be him, obviously Shohei Ohtani. I'm a huge fan of Shohei Ohtani, but I think Juan Soto is more durable. The ceiling's higher. Max Scherzer is definitely a great major league pitcher. Obviously, champion.
Might be a Hall of Fame pitcher one day, too.
Absolutely. But I think you will agree, though, that his better years are behind him. He could be a number 4 guy, maybe in their rotation, number 3 if he's having a good season. Look, they have Gosman, right, in the rotation. They have, I forget who else they have in their rotation. Fuck, how did I forget? I was looking at it the other day. But I think it's a good signing for the money. I think he had a bad season last year, or maybe injuries and stuff, but
yeah, he was injured all hell and back last year with the Rangers. So
I think it's not. Look, my San Francisco Giants signed Verlander, And it's very similar signing. It's like Verlander did not have a good season last year. And the Giants always seem to be that team that picks up on the player that had a bad season, that's at the end or the twilight of his career. And then you're like, hey, maybe we can squeeze a few more years out of him. And I think that's what the Blue Jays are trying to do here. Just have a guy to squeeze into the number 3, number 4 spot in the rotation. And I think Matt Scherzer, even at 38 years old, I believe that's how old he is.
I think he's even older than that. I think he might be 40 now.
Right. Gausman, Barrios, you got Chris Bassett still, you got Scherzer, Rodriguez, you still got Alek Manoah, but I think Alek Manoah is...
That's a whole thing there with Manoah,
right,
in terms of like how he's developed. He was getting better last year, then he got hurt again.
Right.
So now it's really up in the air if he can really get back to any sort of form that he was at. I mean, he was at a Cy Young level at one point, and then all of a sudden, whether it be, you know, hitters were able to just figure him out and he never made the adjustments needed, and motivation, whatever happened there. But I think that's kind of out of the picture now.
Yeah, Scherzer is 40. He is 40. Then you got
to turn 41 this year too. So
right. Barrios as the number 2, I think, this year behind Gausman. He's got a lot of he's got a pretty high ceiling, I think. A good young pitcher. Chris Bassett, he's not young either. He's looking at the mid-30s. He's been in the game for a while. Still a pretty solid pitcher. So I think it helps them in their rotation. Max Scherzer, you never know. The guys could give you 15 wins this year.
You never know.
He might have something to prove. And that is something about Max Scherzer I will give him. He's that type of player. If you discount him, he'll be like, fuck that, I'll show you who I am. And I think that's the energy he's going to be bringing to Toronto this year. I just wish they had more offensive weapon. I think they're missing some offensive weapons. I think this whole like Bichette and Guerrero, like, you're going to have to pick one or figure out how to sign both of them. But even if you do re-sign both of them, dude, you need someone else. I think you need more pieces. But what are your...
I do wonder too if, like, with the Jays, like when they collapsed against Seattle a few years ago.
Right.
And I wonder if they panicked, because that was a really good hitting team that went up against Seattle. And I wonder if they panicked and said, okay, we need to field. We need to get some fielders in there. Because you look at some of the guys that they acquired, it's like not the greatest hitters in the world, but boy, when they're like one of the better fielding, outfielders and all this, like some of the guys that they would bring in. And now all of a sudden, now they can't hit. And they're having a tough time hitting. And so I wonder if they just hit the panic button too soon. It's like, oh, we got to, drastically change course of how to build this team. Because I looked at that Blue Jays squad last year and I thought the pitching was certainly there.
Right.
Like Gausman, I really enjoy watching Gausman pitch.
He's a great pitcher.
And Bassett's good. Like I know Bassett's on the older side, but he still could provide some quality innings. And so we'll see with Scherzer. And at the end of the day, I joke obviously about him kind of being on the wrong side of 40 now, but he's a guy that if he doesn't turn out as much as they hope, he's on a 1-year deal and he could potentially be a trade deadline asset.
Absolutely. I don't think I don't think it's a risky decision. I don't think it's a big risk. I think they had nothing to lose with this. It's like, hey, it doesn't work out. He's gone next year. Then we just move on. I don't think he can make your team worse. There's only room to make it better. And they have other guys, if it doesn't work out, that could just pick up the slack. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that.
I think the big thing is just like after the last 2 years, like, oh, we're in on Shohei Ohtani. Oh, we're in on Juan Soto. Oh, we're in all the big names in MLB.
Pete Alonso, all these guys, all attached to the Blue Jays. Are they only attached or are they really trying to make a push for these guys?
Are they really making a push, or are they just there to be the leverage for these guys to get the bigger deals from the Mets and the Yankees and the those big market teams, the Red Sox?
If I had to put my money, I think it's a little bit more of that than anything else.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're a Canadian baseball team too, because you got to play by the U.S. dollar, and so you already have to overspend a little bit as it is as a Canadian team, like in order to try and entice ball players to come to your squad. And so it is frustrating just to kind of see like if Scherzer came in and it was like other big news, like if we brought in an Alonso, right?
Right.
Or some of the bigger names in free agency, then you add in a Scherzer. It's like, okay, Scherzer could be a nice, like, if he ends up being like, I don't think he'll be like the 2012 to 2015 Max Scherzer we saw where he was like the best pitcher in baseball. But if he's a guy, like you mentioned, that could be fourth or fifth in rotation and could get you quality innings, and it's a different MLB, obviously, you're not required to go 8-9 innings anymore, or, go with 7. Like
Right.
usually with the analytics now, it's like, oh, we get you to 4 or 5, and then we'll get the relievers in. And by the way, I think that's why CC Sabathia got into the Hall of Fame recently, because I think now that pitching has changed, you look at CC Sabathia, just how many innings he just ate up
Right.
as a starting pitcher. Like that half a season in Milwaukee he had where he was just, I think he had like 8 complete games or something like that. Something insane when he was there in Milwaukee.
He's one of the last guys that could give you eat up a big amount of innings.
Yeah,
because now
exactly.
if you go more than 5 now, I'm surprised. And the game has changed. I get it. I see it even at the young levels now. When I coach baseball and we play at an elite level sometimes, and we see it's already pushing these guys to go a certain amount of innings. And obviously at the level where my son plays is different. You're only playing 7 innings, so 5 innings is a lot. It's more like 7, 8 in a 9-inning game, obviously. Yeah, if in the majors now with all those relievers and the analytics, and like you can't go a third time in the rotation because then the averages go up for the hitters, and I understand that. There are still a few guys though that could still give you and push you to 6, 7, even 8 strong innings, keep it up hovering around 100, 110 pitches. So the game has changed, but there's still a few of these old cats like Scherzer and Verlander and all these guys, even Gausman. I mean, now Gausman he'll give you some innings. He's able to push more, but again, I think the teams are being a bit more protective of these pitchers because it helps you get them more down the road. And if you're making a push for the playoff, you want these guys to be fresh or as fresh as possible, not try to pitch so much inning. But it's definitely always exciting with the Toronto Blue Jays, and I'm all here for it. I'm paying attention. I don't necessarily am a fan of them, but they're our only Canadian team, so obviously they're always on my radar as far as like I want to see them succeed. I wouldn't cheer against them when they make the playoff. I'm always happy because I think it's good for baseball here in Canada.
Yeah, I will say though, bring back the Expos. Bring back the Expos.
I do hope that one day we get another I'll just hope for another Canadian team. There's not any other place that you can have it than Montreal, I think.
Yeah.
I
could potentially, Vancouver would be interesting for a baseball team.
Right.
I have a buddy that lives out there that goes to Vancouver. They have I don't know if it's an affiliate team or if it's part of an independent league, but there's a Vancouver baseball team that like draws pretty big crowds for a league of their size.
Really?
So,
yeah.
So Vancouver might be an interesting spot. And then you already have the dynamic there with Seattle if you wanted to do a rivalry.
Absolutely.
And so that could be interesting. But yeah, at the end of the day, though, and again, I'm a little bit biased because, again, coming from the Ottawa region, the Ottawa Lynx were the affiliate for the Montreal Expos for so many years. So that's where the Expos connection kind of comes in for me. So I hope one day that the Expos come back. But the more it gets further along, like MLB is looking at expansion right now, and it doesn't look like Montreal is on that list. It looks like they might be going to different spots. But I'm still holding out hope. I want the Expos to come back.
I do too, my friend. Anything else to add to this point of yours?
No, I just wanted to make sure. I want to throw that out there. Obviously, spring training is
coming up,
beginning very, very soon. The pitchers and catchers reported last I checked, so getting closer and closer to start a baseball season.
It's good to see Shohei Ohtani. He got approved for a 2-way player this year again, so I believe he'll be pitching. So I think the Dodgers are the team to watch. Their fucking rotation is just out of this world. I don't understand. If the Shohei Ohtani gets added to the rotation with Roki that just got signed, and I can't even think about it. I'm a Giants fan. Fuck the Dodgers. I hope
George Steinbrenner is rolling in his grave seeing this LA Dodgers squad and how stacked it is and how much money has been spent.
I mean, I love every single player they have on their roster. Freddie Freeman is one of my favorite players. Mookie Betts, one of my favorite players. Shohei Ohtani, one of my favorite players. they all wear the goddamn Dodgers uniform, and it makes me sick. It makes me sick because I'm the other side of the rivalry. I'm the Giants fan. Oh man, and it's like, look, we won 3 in 5 years, not that long ago. I'm still all right with that. I'm like, all right, like I want my team to win, but I'm still living off it's still paying off for me. So I'm still good, but I love baseball. I love these baseball players, but the Dodgers kind of making it unfair for the rest of the league right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch this year. That's for sure.
Before we end the show, I want to end it on this. WrestleMania season is around the corner. We got Elimination Chamber in Toronto in a couple of weeks, I believe. Is it next? Yeah, a couple of weeks. Almost set up for the match. Just quickly wanted your thought on the potential matches of what we're about to see. Right now, we have a few matches that seem to be announced. Jey Uso, who won the Royal Rumble, ended up picking Gunther as the champion that he will face at WrestleMania. You got Tiffany Stratton yesterday, Charlotte Flair, that ended up picking Tiffany Stratton. I think we all saw that coming. I saw it coming from a long time ago, even before she came back. I'm like, if there's a match I want to see at WrestleMania, it's Tiffany Stratton. I am high on Tiffany Stratton. She is one of my favorite wrestlers to watch right now, just from her persona to her abilities in the ring. I'm really big on thing. I'm not as sold on Jey Uso yet. I love the energy he brings. I do not know if he can be your guy. Maybe he could be your world champion. He might not be your number one. I think Cody Rhodes still holds that and everything. And then everything else is kind of up in the air. There's a lot of matches that are rumored. I've been seeing a lot of John Cena versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. Look, I'm John Cena. Look, I'm fine with him doing this retirement run until the end of 2025. Do not think he should beat Ric Flair's record. What are your thoughts on this?
So I've been saying that John Cena is going to face Cody Rhodes for a while. I even said he was going to win the Rumble, and then that exploded spectacularly in my face with Jey Uso winning. And I have not heard the end of it from my listener base over at This Is Wrestling, especially from my co-host Lever Sage there. But I still feel like we're going to get John Cena. I still feel like he's going to win the Chamber. I think it just makes too much sense business-wise to have him at least challenge for the world title at WrestleMania, challenge for that 17th title. Mm-hmm. Like, I think you've just got something built in there that a lot of fans like. I was never the biggest John Cena guy when he was around. I always respected him. Let me just say that.
So I'm the same.
Yeah, the work that he put in, and there was a time when he was the U.S. champion where he was just putting on these fantastic matches. I mean, the ones that stick out are the matches with Kevin Owens as well.
Yes,
I love those matches. I thought were so much fun. But now, like, I've seen Cena wrestle the last little bit, and he's just not the same guy. No. He's older, and when he's doing that and also balancing Hollywood, it's just tough to get back to that peak level. Still looks very good for his age. I'm not saying like if I'm him at 50, I'm gonna be bad at myself.
Right.
I'm still gonna get my 6-pack abs, right? But I look at that. I think John Cena's gonna win it. And main events. If you were to ask me a few months ago, I would have also said he would win the title because I think that just makes so much sense. But now as this story kind of continues along, the more I'm thinking, maybe he won't win it at Mania.
Right.
Maybe there's the longer story here is that his final match, he challenges for the title and to get the 17th. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I do think he's going to get the 17th World Championship win.
At WrestleMania?
Maybe WrestleMania, definitely before the end of the year.
Right.
There was talk of potentially like, the idea that was floated by my co-host Lever Sage is they run a show in Boston and that's the final pay-per-view of the year. And then that would be John Cena's title match and you could have the atmosphere there and whatnot. And you could have him win his world title in Boston. And I could see that, but I think if you want that world title win, I think it should be in front of a big crowd.
Right.
I'm still locked in. It's burned me once before, so it'll probably burn me again, but I still feel like that's the way to go. On the Jey Uso stuff, so I'm not as high on Jey Uso, especially in-ring. I just don't find he connects in-ring.
Right, in-ring is my issue as well.
Yeah, Yeah, with in-ring with him, like, I find he just doesn't connect with an audience. Like, obviously, he's got the great entrance. He got 70,000 people at the Rumble chanting Yeet at
Yeah.
him. I can't believe Yeet is still a thing in 2025.
It's
But
crazy.
but you know what? Sometimes the craziest things get over in wrestling,
Right.
right? We've seen it plenty of times. So I'm not as sold. I've always been somebody when it comes to, you have promotions say they tell you that this guy's a top guy and they tell you that this thing is that. But my thing I always say on the wrestling show is like the booking never lies. So they could tell me he's a world champion, a top level guy. But if he's booked in the middle of the card, and it's in a 6-minute match, like you can tell me all you want, he's a top level guy, but you're booking him in the middle part of the card, So to me, if you want to go all the way, you put him into the main event of one of those nights and you have the reaction because he's going to beat Gunter for the world title. That there's no doubt in my mind on that. And so to me, if you want to really establish him as a guy, it's like, this is a guy we're going to push and we're going to see him through as a main event guy. And I think you put him in the main event of one of those WrestleManias, give him the big title win and you see what you got. But I don't think they will do that. I think he will open one of those nights and you could get right off the bat that big crowd reaction. And so, yeah, there's a lot with Jey Uso that I think he's got to show that he can be a guy. And I just look at history with him the last couple of years and I just don't see it.
Right.
I just don't think he has that it factor to get to the next level when it comes to connecting in ring. Because once the match starts, I find the crowd really dies down until they start eating, obviously.
Right.
So that's kind of thing there. And then other WrestleMania stuff, like I think it'll be interesting with the Tiffany Stratton Charlotte Flair match. I really like Tiffany Stratton. I think she's got such a high ceiling if she continues to develop the right way.
Right.
I really like her. I think her with Charlotte Flair, I think will be a big test for her. Obviously a big stage at WrestleMania. And I'm confident Charlotte can pull a good match out of her as well.
Right.
So I think that could be interesting. And again, trying to see the upward trajectory for her. And then, other stuff, we could see CM Punk taking on Roman Reigns.
Right.
And I think that would be a big program as well. I think they're still holding on to the back pocket of what's the favor that Paul Heyman owes CM Punk for, the War Games stuff. So that's kind of in their back pocket that they want to do. And if Seth gets involved, Seth gets involved. But they've got some ways to go, some storylines, I should say, that they could go down with WrestleMania season. Elimination Chamber obviously should kind of set some paths forward for WrestleMania. But yeah, it's interesting. I've said last time when we talked about pro wrestling, some of the WWE stuff doesn't connect to me as much as it does for others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think really the big disconnect that I have with the WWE is really just the in-ring stuff. Not that they're having bad matches,
Mm-hmm.
but I just find that the modern WWE crowd is more into chants and entrances and music as opposed to what's being presented in the ring.
Right.
And so it has me, having a tough time really connecting with this modern product, but they do have some avenues that they could go down and could certainly keep business interest up. So a lot of different paths it could go down.
One thing I feel like they're doing a lot better than they used to in the last year, and I think this is a product of having Triple H involved with creative, is that they're really good at giving you a lot of options. I said it for Royal Rumble. I think this year's Royal Rumble, the setup, I won't talk about the match. I think I would have to rewatch the match to say if it was a good Royal Rumble or not. Because right now I'm kind of iffy on it. I think with all the talent, with all the different storylines, with all the different directions you could have gone, that's what they were good at. The build up to Royal Rumble. I did not have a pick for the Royal Rumble because I was like, it could be Roman Reigns. It could be CM Punk. It could be Seth Rollins. It could be Drew McIntyre. Maybe Jey Uso. Like, Jey Uso might have been, my son said it was going to be Jey. My son called it. He's like, I'm picking Jey Uso. He's winning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, Jey
go.
Uso. I'm like, nah, you're crazy, Jey Uso. He's like, dude, Jey Uso's winning. I said, I'd have John Cena winning before Jey Uso. Right? It's like, they're really good at keeping us on our toes and not being as predictable. I think the WWE under Vince McMahon became way too predictable, where it took away from like, yeah, we know you're going to have a good match on Raw, but we all know what that's going to end. There's no way he's going to lose the title on Raw, so why even have the match on Raw? Like, if you're not building to another storyline with one of the wrestlers, And that's kind of what I think might happen, in my opinion, with Jey Uso. I don't think they necessarily have to put the belt on him at WrestleMania, because I believe there might be a storyline within the bloodline that gets him to lose the title and him move forward. Because like you, I'm not sold on him in ring, and I'm not sold as him as a world champion. You could put the Intercontinental belt on him, the United States champion belt. Bring back the Usos as a tag team. I don't care. They're good. I'm not saying he's not good, but I'm big on Gunther. And to have him as your world champion, the only way I could see Gunther losing at WrestleMania is if he moves on and to the next championship. Because I think we can all agree that the WWE championship is the pillar, is the number one championship, right? The world championship is the number two belt. The number one belt is what Cody Rhodes is holding. And I am cooling down on Cody Rhodes. I think he either needs to go heel with the belt or he needs to drop the belt and kind of build in a different direction. And I think that, like you said, I think that might be what happens at WrestleMania, have John Cena be in, whatever the case may be. But WWE has been real good at keeping us on our toes and making you not being able to completely guess what the outcome of every match is. They have so many options. They have so many guys on top. Drew McIntyre is doing some of his best work he's done in a lot of years, especially on the microphone. You got Randy Orton that's coming back probably. You got Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn at Elimination Chamber that got announced yesterday. I'm like, good Lord. Like, and then if they're having a match at the Elimination Chamber, what's going to be their role in WrestleMania? You don't understand? Like, are they going to have some sort of bigger match at WrestleMania for Zayn? I could see that happening. What's about CM Punk? If you're not going to have him wrestle in the main event at WrestleMania, like, are you ever going to have him wrestle in at the main event in WrestleMania? Or is he just there to provide you with a different option? So, like you, I do agree sometimes that the in-ring performance is kind of just there as a in-between segment thing. It's like, there's going to be commercials. We're kind of just here to sell you products on TV. And now that it's on Netflix, also, I think it's different. But you're right. I think if you look at AEW, I think they definitely have more of an independent style of wrestling, obviously, versus the grandiose like more of a theater, show in the WWE. And I've kind of fell in love with the WWE style for a while. Not that I don't enjoy. Obviously, I'm an independent wrestler myself. So when I go and perform, I'm not performing for the style of WWE. It's more so I have to kind of adapt my style. But I love what they're doing simply because it keeps me attached and it keeps me tuning in every Monday and it keeps me tuning in every Friday just because I'm curious to know where they're going with the thing. And honestly, I'll get caught fast forwarding through a lot of matches. I'm like, I don't want to see this. I do not want to see this again. I've been seeing this 10 times with just 3 different wrestlers. Like, I'm really disappointed with what they're doing currently with the tag team championships, with DIY and all these guys. I think they could be doing a lot more with this belt. I'm a big fan of bringing 2 singles wrestlers together, especially closer to WrestleMania, to maybe put the belt on them so it could give an opportunity for a younger team. Like, I don't know. It's not coming through for me with DIY. I know Triple H is big on them, but there's a lot of avenue. Plus, women's wrestling right now is booming. You got Jade Cargill that'll probably be coming back. There's a big storyline there. I'm looking forward. Again, Tiffany Stratton, I think could go over. I just hope. I will say this. I do prefer her as a heel, and I kind of wish that she wouldn't have became champion and then immediately go to a face. I think she needs a lot of work as the face, and I can understand it. I've played the face before, and luckily for me, right now, I get to play a heel, which I've wanted to play my whole career, and I'm telling you right now, I fucking love it. And for me, it's who I feel like I was born to be as a wrestler, was the heel.
Yep. I could tell, by the way, in some of those promo videos, like with Shane Pinto there. Yeah, Shane's fantastic.
Yeah. So yesterday I had a match. Our match was changed. I had a scheduled match with Tyler Knox, okay, at NOW. And our match ended up being changed with me versus Tyler Knox versus Christera in the main event. And I was completely like, Christera is just to me like one of the number one wrestlers in the recent years, like in the last
She's
12 months.
fantastic. She's very good.
The energy she brings, and like I was so nervous. I had never been nervous like that for a wrestling match. I was like, what is this? Like there's a lot of factors to why I was nervous outside of wrestling. It's been a tough couple of weeks for me, and I was just there, and there's a lot of physical thing bugging me as well. But I was just like, oh my God, and I've been wanting to wrestle Tyler for a long time. Me and him have been wanting to wrestle. So when she got added to our match and like triple threat, blah, 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 it was just so much fun and so much talent. And I was just being a heel, right? So back to my Tiffany Stratton, I loved her before she was champion because I liked her in NXT. I didn't really like how when they brought her in as the little sidekick to Nia Jax for a while. I didn't kind of like that, but I saw where they were kind of going with this. Again, I would have rather seen her as a heel versus a Becky Lynch in WrestleMania than see her as a face versus a heel Charlotte. And hopefully, like you said, I hope that Charlotte is, and I think that's what they're counting on. I think they want Charlotte to just pull the absolute best out of her and have her go over and have her get that rub of beating a 14-time world champion, I believe, Charlotte Flair. Or they'll just end up doing what they did a few years past when she came back against Rhea Ripley, and who knows, maybe they'll put another championship on Charlotte Flair for a short amount of time. But there is one thing, though, that one last point I wanted to make about John Cena. Do you think there's a chance where if they do put the belt on him at WrestleMania, are you expecting a reign up until his retirement match, which would most likely be in December?
Yeah, that would be interesting, right? Right now, the way that they've been utilizing him, they've kind of been backloading a lot of the dates that he has on his contract for this retirement tour to really be where he would finish out the year in December.
Right.
So I could totally see it. The thing with John Cena is that when you put his name on the marquee, he sells a lot of tickets.
Absolutely.
And so having him in the world championship, I think I know we had the argument. When I say we, I mean like the general wrestling audience. I know they've had the argument over the last couple of years, especially when it was Vince and it was Brock Lesnar, like part-time guys coming in, winning the belts, and not showing up on TV. And I know that can be frustrating. It's because you want your champions, especially in the modern age. This isn't, Hulk Hogan in 1980,
right,
where you could just get away with doing house shows. Like, you need to have something interesting on weekly TV each week. So, but I think with Cena, the way that they're doing it is they're backloading a lot of those dates. And I think they're setting up so that he can be somebody that can hold the belt and show up on TV each week. And
he doesn't have to wrestle.
No,
he just needs to.
Exactly.
Because when was the last time Cody Rhodes defended the championship?
Yeah, it was before the Rumble. It was, he had the Saturday night's main event show
against Kevin Owens.
Yep. And so
that was the last time.
Yep.
Did he defend at Rumble?
Yeah, the ladder match.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What the fuck? How did I forget that? Oh, that was a great match.
But even Gunther, like we were mentioning Gunther, he doesn't defend the belt on every PLE either. Right. So and quite frankly, I don't hear much uproar. Like, I personally would like Gunther on every single show on my TV because I just think he's fantastic.
Absolutely.
But I don't find personally, and I could be wrong, but I don't find personally there's an uproar from the WWE audience when Gunther is not on the PLE defending the belt.
Right.
So I think you could easily get away with that with Cena as well. For TKO as well, when they're trying to sell out these big international shows as well, you don't think John Cena being on the marquee defending a championship internationally wouldn't sell shows?
Going to Saudi Arabia and having John Cena as champion?
I mean, that's an easy sell for them.
They'll make their money for the year just going there with John Cena as their champion. And you've seen it before because these guys love the old guys, right? On every card, they'll bring back Bill Goldberg just to go to Saudi Arabia. Right? It's like, bro.
They'll pretend the guy is Yokozuna so that he could be on the card. Remember that a couple of years ago? That was crazy.
That was the craziest shit ever. Yeah, that's absolutely. And look, business is business. It's like, at the end of the day, it's what's the main priority of professional wrestling, especially at their levels? How am I going to make money? How am I going to sell tickets? John Cena definitely helps to sell not just tickets,
merchandise.
And it helped. Now they're on Netflix and he's from Hollywood. Like, it just goes hand in hand together. And I'm excited about all the different avenues about it. And I'm looking forward to, I feel like we're already here. We were just here last year with WrestleMania. I feel like this year went by so fast, and there were so many changes in the business with Netflix. I think this is just going to keep growing and growing. And I think it's good for WWE, obviously, but I also think it's good for AEW. And I also think it's good for independent wrestling all across the world. And I've seen it, and I'm seeing it more and more. And people, even at an independent level, the promoters are starting to take it a bit more, I wouldn't say seriously, but wrestlers aren't bouncing around like they used to. It's more like, I'm going to try to get my core of guys and build something with these cores of guys. Yeah. And I like that. I'm at an age where I do not want to wrestle every weekend. I am in pain right now from my match yesterday. And I'm like, God, like if I had to wrestle again tonight, whew,
it's not going to be fun.
I got to medicate myself before I get in that ring. Like, and I'm not one to do that stuff. So it's like, yeah, like as much as I enjoy being part of this right now, I also enjoy being part of one place, trying to build something there, work on my persona as a heel and do all those things. And I think what's going on in WWE right now might not be for everybody, but I think the exposure that they're giving to the business of professional wrestling is good for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. And on that point of like building a core, I'll give a shout out to Remix Wrestling, which I call professional wrestling, where you worked the show before well.
I did.
We were calling your match.
Yes, sir.
And but that's also too in Remix. They are building a core of guys. You know, Johnny Taco is one of the guys that they're building, and London Lightning is somebody that Tony Khan is taking a look at as well. Did the endorsement for him when they were in Canada doing their tour.
Right.
You know, they've got a couple of guys as well. Project 8100 as well that they've just circled. It's like, all right, we're gonna get these guys, and we're just gonna like. We'll obviously, you know, book other guys in between, but these are the core guys, the familiar faces of the promotion you're going to see when you come into a Remix show. So I think that's a great point as well.
Before we end, I want to give a shout out to one of my favorite wrestlers from last year that I've seen on the independent scene. Her name is Drea Mitchell. She is an absolute beast. I saw her wrestle before I went on vacation at the NOW. She wrestled another one of my current favorite, Leah Sparks. Yeah. Drea Mitchell is something to watch, and she's really good. Her, Christera, and a few other names. Like I said, Leah Sparks. There's a few guys, Tyler Knox, I'm seeing just constantly grinding, getting on as many shows as possible, getting as much experience as possible, getting as much exposure as possible. I just love seeing it, and I love seeing these talented people getting in the ring and just getting at it. I love it.
A lot of really talented wrestlers coming through.
Absolutely.
So good.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad I'd be calling stuff for Remix and seeing all these talented guys and gals that are coming through. And especially, I mean, some of the women's wrestlers coming from Quebec is just unbelievable. Like you mentioned, Christara, Drea Mitchell. She had a great match with Junior Benito for Remix recently. Right. I highly recommend people go check out. Danny Leo is another one that's also very, very good. And so many more. Leah Sparks, as you mentioned.
Right.
I'm leaving out so many.
Absolutely.
It's a really good time. There's some really, really good wrestlers on the up and coming that are coming up. That's it's really exciting right now to be an independent wrestling fan.
Yeah, and for a guy like me that kind of just got back into it a couple months ago, and get to wrestle sometimes on the same card as these guys, or to get lucky like I got yesterday and get in the ring with two of the wrestlers we just named. That's why I'm in it. That's why I love doing this. Zach, I thank you again for this episode and for joining me and being able to talk sports. It allows me to disconnect from all the craziness that I have going on in the life, and I just love talking to you about sports. And hopefully we'll get to do it again soon for another episode of Blue Collar Sports. Thanks again, Zach.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always fun doing this and chatting sports, as you mentioned, and even a little wrestling there at the end.
Yeah.
You never know what will be brought up.
Every time I bring up wrestling, I'm like, this is going to be 20 minutes because I got a lot to say, and it's one of the things I'm very knowledgeable, obviously, about, so I know it'll drag on. Like, we've done an hour and a half with the editing, and it might be cut down to maybe an hour and 15, but I don't mind it as long as it keeps... it gets a good flow and everything. But check us out on YouTube at SVGTV. That's SVGTV on YouTube. Subscribe today and don't miss another episode of Blue Collar Sports. Zach, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.